Though 2024 wasn't quite as stacked of a year as 2023 was, there have nonetheless been plenty of major and excellent new releases throughout the year, and arguably one of the biggest ones is still ahead of us. Right before the year comes to a close, MachineGames, Bethesda, and Microsoft will finally be delivering Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and it would be by no means an exaggeration to call it one of 2024's most prominent releases.
Gotta find the stone and get off this shit.
What's that in his hand?
What does it say?
Earth something. What was that?
We'd better hide.
From the IP name that it carries, to the studios that's making the game, to how promising the game itself has looked, there's plenty of reasons for that. Let's start with the fact that this is MachineGames' first release in 7 years, or first major release at least. Sure, we got Wolfenstein Youngblood in 2019, but A, that was a standalone entry rather than a mainline sequel, B, it was co-developed by Arcane Lion, and C, well, it wasn't very good, so let's just not talk about it, maybe. You'd have to go back to Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus in 2017 for MachineGames' last flagship release, so naturally fans of the studio's work are excited to finally be getting from the team again. We obviously can't ignore the fact that many had hoped we'd be getting Wolfenstein 3, but that's a different conversation. The crux of the matter is that MachineGames is finally ready to release another major game. It's much needed too, because 2024 has once again been a somewhat spotty year for Xbox, as far as first-party releases are concerned. Hellblade 2 ended up disappointing a fair few people. Towerborn's early access version is PC exclusive for now, and it felt like it just came and went. And even Starfield Shattered Space and Expansion, not a full new release, did not enjoy the best critical reception, mildly put.
You made it. I hope you're enjoying the view. I never get tired of staring at it.
Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, however, is looking like it may just end up helping Xbox and 2024 on a strong note as far as exclusives are concerned, especially when paired with something like Stalker 2, which is also launching imminently.
A good man is always on time for lunch.
Who said I'm a good man?
Richter, and the guys from the detention center. And me, Scar.
Of course, none of this would mean much if the game itself wasn't taking promising shape, though thankfully enough, there is plenty that Bethesda has shown of the indie game so far, and it's fair to say that things are looking good. For Indiana Jones fans in particular, The Great Circle may just end up being the classic globetrotting follow-up to the original movies that Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny failed to be. Of course, Harrison Ford himself isn't starring in the game, so you wouldn't be blamed for being skeptical about how much like indie it is, really even going into the feel. The thing is, however, that based on all that we've seen of the game and based on what hands-on impressions have suggested, prolific actor Troy Baker seems to be doing a great job of emulating Ford's performance as the wisecracking archaeologist in the game.
You American rat.
What stone?
Have you ever heard of Höhenangst?
Fear of heights?
Yes! And I have it. I endured this dreadful mountain even if my mind was screaming every step of the way. Because of a concept you narrow-minded Americans will never understand!
From the one-liners and the mannerisms to the game's general tone and sense of humor, it feels like it's going to be that authentic indie adventure that many have been craving for so long. Bethesda bigwig Todd Howard, who also happens to be a lifelong Indiana Jones fan, is behind the Great Circle story, and has also served as its executive producer, so there's definitely some big-name star power attached to the game, and all of it seems to be single-mindedly focused on making it as true to the spirit of the IP as possible, which is definitely good news for fans. From a gameplay perspective, meanwhile, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is making some intriguing promises. Take for instance the fact that it's very much not going to be a first-person shooter, even though it is a first-person game, and it will have guns that you'll be able to shoot. MachineGames, however, is fully aware that this is Indiana Jones, not Wolfenstein, which means that it will have to feel like the former. The studio has stressed on several occasions that the game doesn't encourage gunplay, and that players are instead very much encouraged to be creative in combat situations. There's apparently going to be a big focus on stealth, while melee combat as well is also going to be a big focus. How the latter will shake out remains to be seen, because first-person melee combat doesn't always work well, but the idea of a slower-paced game that emphasizes improvisation rather than aggressive run-and-gun strategies definitely feels like the right one for an Indiana Jones adaptation. Outside of combat, meanwhile, the game's immersive sim tendencies will apparently be even more highlighted, with open-ended environments with plenty of room for exploration, social stealth mechanics, different options and how to tackle objectives, and more. A mix of linear and semi-open level design always sounds appealing, so our hope is that the Great Circle is going to be able to implement those ideas successfully. But of course, as Professor Henry Jones Jr., you're going to be focusing on solving archaeological and historical mysteries, much more than you're going to be fighting goons and Nazis, which is another area where the game is taking interesting shape. According to its developers, the game is going to be so heavily focused on puzzles that the loop is almost going to feel like a classic point-and-click adventure game, which we're quite frankly excited about. Not only because that sounds like a great fit for an indie game, but because we're just curious to see what a first-person action-adventure title with a heavy focus on adventure-style puzzles would even play like. Clearly, it's not going to be your typical Uncharted or Tomb Raider-style action-driven experience, even though it does look like there's going to be plenty of action offered throughout the game for those looking for it. Then again, Indiana Jones is the IP that inspired the creation of the likes of Uncharted and Tomb Raider, so it's definitely a good thing that MachineGames' adaptation of Indiana Jones is taking cues not from the things that Indiana Jones inspired, but from Indiana Jones itself. It was back in January of 2021 that it was announced that MachineGames was developing an Indiana Jones game, so the wait for it has certainly not been a short one. And now that the game is almost here, the excitement surrounding it is only continuing to build. MachineGames has an excellent track record as a developer, and interest in anything that it does is always going to be high. That, combined with how good the Great Circle has looked in the lead up to its launch, has ensured that there's no shortage of eyes on the game as we count the days down to its release. Whether it lives up to its promise as a major new AAA release from a studio with a great track record remains to be seen. From the disastrous Redfall to the divisive Starfield to the tepidly received Hellblade 2, that hasn't always been the case with first-party Xbox games in recent years. But what has been shown of the game so far certainly seems to warrant optimism. Hey, did you know that we at GamingBolt upload new videos every day? Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and hit that bell. And let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.